Yahoo Fantasy Baseball, the Tucson Toros League, has entered its playoffs. We're here for the Week 23 Quarterfinals Quicktake. Let's get right to it. There were only 4 matchups this week, as 4 teams had a bye. 4 teams have been eliminated from play entirely, so half as many matchups as usual, so we'll try to get through this pretty quickly this week. The championship bracket is where it counts the most right now. The first matchup on the championship bracket side, Jimmy Dugan, the number 3 seed, knocked off Waveland and Sheffield, the 6 seed, 6-4 in a tight one. Jimmy Dugan advances to face number 2 AZ Padres this week in Week 24 action, while Waveland and Sheffield falls to the 5th place game. Dugan on the offensive side and on the pitching side took 3 out of 5 categories. 6 of the 10 categories this week, though, were pretty close battles, as Dugan definitely breathed a sigh of relief, being the only higher-seeded team to win their matchup this week in any of the 4 battles. On offense, Dugan won runs, RBIs, and stolen bases, while Waveland took homers and average. For Dugan, 3 players hit 3 homers each, but the team was still unable to win the homers category. Ryan Howard, Jose Bautista, and B.J. Upton all had 3 homers apiece this week in an offensive explosion for Dugan. Ryan Howard hit 11 RBIs to go with those 3 homers, 7 runs, and a .345 average as Mr. September stepped up to the plate finally after a month or so of terrible play out of the entire Phillies offense. B.J. Upton had 3 homers, 6 RBIs, 7 runs, 3 stolen bases, and a .318 average, definitely being the 5-category star that Dugan has looked for all season. And Jose Tabata continues to be an unusual source of offensive firepower, picking up 3 stolen bases, 4 RBIs, and a .375 average. Dugan had 5 players hit over 300 this week on a team that has definitely struggled, being one of the worst batting average teams, in fact the worst batting average team in the league all season long. Waveland and Sheffield had 7 players hit homers this week to take the home run category, including Albert Pujols, who had 4 homers, 7 runs, 8 RBIs, and a .321 average. Marco Scutaro chipped in 3 homers, 4 RBIs, and a .353 average, as Waveland collected 6 players who hit over 300 this week, including Johnny Damon, who hit .429, and Jason Hayward, who hit .423. 4 players, though, for Waveland unfortunately hit under 200 this week, including Alfonso Soriano, who hit just .133, and Miguel Tejada, who hit just .120. The lone stolen base for Waveland this week was Bobby Abreu. He was the only person to get a stolen base for Waveland and Sheffield. He also only hit .150 for the week. On the pitching side, Dugan took wins, saves, and strikeouts while losing ERA and WHIP in close battles. Dugan had John Lester and Ricky Romero for the team's only wins this week. Lester had 10 Ks to go with his victory. Dugan had 3 pitchers with a 0 ERA and 3 pitchers with an ERA over 6. One of those pitchers was Brett Cecil with an ERA of 31.5 with a 5 WHIP in a disastrous outing for the Blue Jays. Waveland counted on the pitching side by not setting the lineup this week. Unfortunately, it didn't look like a whole lot of it was done. There was an empty slot sitting in one of the starting slots, so Waveland did not put up much of a fight on the pitching side. Used only 6 pitchers overall, no wins and no saves. John Roush, for example, had a 0 ERA this week, but also had no Ks to go with no wins and saves. And Felix Hernandez, the ace of the Waveland staff, had no wins, 5 Ks, and a 5.68 ERA in a definite losing effort. So the other side of the bracket, what happened in the 4 versus 5 matchup? Well, number 4 did not hold serve as the grassy knoll, number 5, knocked off number 4 Greek Thunder 8-2 in a rout. Knoll advances now to face number 1 seed Twice as Nice in the semifinals. Greek now falls to the 5th place game where they will take on Waveland and Sheffield in Week 24 action, and both teams will be done after Week 24. Knoll swept the pitching side 5-0 and then took offense 3-2. On offense, Knoll took runs, RBIs, RBIs, and average, while Greek took homers and stolen bases. Tight battles, though, in the runs, homers, and RBI categories. Knoll had 6 players hit homers. None hit more than 1, though. The team managed just 1 stolen base again. This time it was Ian Desmond giving the lone stolen base to Grassy Knoll. Matt Holliday had 6 runs, 4 RBIs, and a .375 average. Miguel Cabrera had 5 runs, 6 RBIs, and a .353 average. Those 2 definitely helped Knoll take the three of the 3 offensive categories that Knoll was able to win. The only other player on Noel's offensive staff that was able to hit over 300 this week was Ryan Rayburn. He hit 429 for the week. Noel definitely had a couple players that struggled, though. As we mentioned, Ian Desmond had the only stolen base for this team. He also only hit 100 for the week. And Casey Blake hit 133 before being axed. Greek Thunder on the offensive side had 6 players hit homers. Nelson Cruz had 3 himself, including 4 RBIs, 8 runs, and a 344 average. But just 2 players managed to hit over 300, Cruz and Chase Utley. 7 players for Greek Thunder hit under 200 this week. That included Giovanni Soto, Jorge Cantu, Ryan Terrio, Chris Young, Ryan Ludwig, Starlin Castro, and Carlos Pena. Terrio, for example, he hit 0 this week. He did not have a single hit all week, but he did manage 2 stolen bases. That was the only category in which Terrio contributed. On the pitching side, Noel swept pitching. Carlos Lee, Dan Herron, Brian Matus, Brett Myers, and Daniel Hudson all picked up victories for Noel this week. 6 pitchers with an ERA under 2. Dan Herron had an excellent week. 1 win, 12 Ks, and a 1.29 ERA. Carlos Marmol out of the pen had 3 saves for Grassy Knoll with a 0 ERA. And Brian Wilson had 2 saves with a 0 ERA. The lone sore spot for Noel this week, Rafael Soriano, he did chip in a save, but had an ERA of 18. Greek's pitching staff struggled this week. The lone win, Sean Markham with a win and 14 Ks. Johnny Cueto chipped in 12 Ks but did not get a victory. And then the pitching staff, the bullpen for Greek that has been excellent all season long, they struggled too. 2 saves apiece from Neftali Feliz and Brandon Lyon, but Brandon Lyon's ERA this week was 6, as 3 pitchers on the Greek staff had an ERA of 6 or higher. The sore spot there, Matt Garza. He only had 1 K, no wins, and a 12.46 ERA, leading to Greek's demise. On the consolation bracket matchups this week, number 12, the Metropolitans, knocked off number 9, Hunt, 1981, in an ugly battle, 6-2-2, pulling off an upset. Mets upsetting Hunt means that Mets will now face Otis and the Drunks in the consolation semifinal number 1 next week. Hunt now falls to the 11th place game with the loss, having lost multiple weeks in a row now. Mets won offense 3-0-2, and then won pitching 3-2. Offense was just an ugly, ugly mess. Horribly uncompetitive. These two teams combined for just 26 runs, 2 homers, and 27 RBIs. They did combine for 8 stolen bases, however, but Hunt hit just 200 for the week with the few players they were using. The offenses were pretty depleted, too. The two teams combined for 5 DL starters this week. On the pitching side, Mets took saves, ERA, and whip, while Hunt took wins and Ks. Hunt had Tim Lincecum help out in the wins and Ks category with 2 wins and 20 Ks this week. Mets used just 6 players this week on the pitching side. All of them had an ERA under 4. Less is more definitely helped Mets this week. Hunt had the disastrous Leo Nunez, who lost his closer's job a while ago, had an ERA of 13.5, and Bronson Arroyo, who had an ERA of 14.54. The other consolation quarterfinal bracket match was Derek Lowe equals Cheater, number 11 going in, knocking off number 10, Tucson's Prettiest, 7-2-1. Cheater now advances to face top-seeded consolation bracket member Koufax's Revenge in the consolation semifinals, while Tucson's Prettiest will now face Hunt in what is sure to be an awful battle in the 11th place matchup. Cheater took offense 4-1 in an absolute rout. Pitching was Cheater as well, winning 3-1-1. Tucson's Prettiest won the saves category 1-0 and then won average, but was pretty much miserable in every other category. On the offensive side, Cheater took everything but average. Cheater had 7 players hit homers, 4 multi-homer performances this week, 4 different players. 3 players hit over 300, but 4 players hit under 200, so definitely a tale of a two-faced team this week with Cheater. Tucson's Prettiest didn't set the lineup on offense, was using just 9 offensive players, and was pretty much uncompetitive across the board. On the pitching side, Cheater had Giovanni Gallardo with a win, 10 Ks and a 1.29 ERA. Tucson's Prettiest had 3 pitching wins, but 4 pitchers with an ERA of 6 or higher, including Francisco Cordero, who had a win, no Ks, and a 19.29 ERA. So, wasn't following the Reds that closely this week. Not sure how that happened, but that is a pretty ugly and confusing stat line for Tucson's Prettiest in the loss. Next week, the semifinals in Week 24 action. The two semifinal matchups in the championship bracket. Number 1, Twice as Nice, going to be taking on the Grassy Knoll, number 5. And number 2, AZ Padres is in action this week, taking on number 3, Jimmy Dugan. The 5th place game this week will be Greek Thunder, number 4, taking on number 6, Waveland and Sheffield. After that game is over, those two teams will be concluding their season. The consolation semifinals. Number 7, Koufax's Revenge, will take on number 11, Derek Low Equals Cheater. And number 8, Otis and the Drunks, will take on number 12, the Metropolitans. The 11th place game will feature number 9, Hunt 1981, taking on number 10, Tucson's Prettiest, in what is sure to be an awful display of offense and pitching. So I hope to see you back next week for Week 24 action in the Tucson Toros League. So we'll catch you then 1 week from today.